Welcome, this is Jennifer. I'm so glad you're here. Now, if you've watched my videos before, you know I love dimension on cards. I think using dimension is a great way to make your handmade creations stand out even more. Well, today I'm going to talk a lot about that and how you can actually do stepped back die cutting and added on dimension to really get that depth. However, if dimension isn't your thing, I will share how you can do this technique with less bulk. And I will be sharing some tips for foiling and inking over a stencil. Let's get started with this example here. Now for this card, and actually the next one too, I'll be using the Waffle Flower Winter Leaves. There is a stamp set, a die set, a foiling set, and a stencil. Now these can be used together or separately. I will be focusing on the foil, die, and stencil and not using the stamp set today. However, I did want to talk about the stamp set quickly in case you're interested in that instead of foiling. The stamp set, you can stamp like the twig and then stamp the individual berries, just following the guide on the stamp packaging, or you could use the stencil with it. Also note that the stamp set is called Winter Leaves Reversed. That is because all of the images on the stamp set are the reverse of the foil plates. This is actually really clever because you can have the images go in different directions. So you could have the leaf of the stamps going to the right, the leaf from the foil plate going to the left. And the stencil will work with both. You just flip it over for the stamp set and then flip it back over for the foil. So that way you could create a fun cluster of flowers and have lots of options. I just wanted to mention that the stamp set's a bit different because I think it's pretty clever. Again, I'll only be using the foil plate, the dies, and the stencil. Let's start by doing some foiling. I thought I'd share a few tips that I found helpful lately. One is that I really like the Spellbinders Best Ever tape when I'm doing foiling. It comes in 3 widths now, a narrow, medium, and wide width, and I'll use all 3 today. I like to create a little hinge on the side of my foil plate, as you see I've done here, and I pull it back a little. Then I can slide my foil under that, pretty side facing up, and flip the foil plate back down onto the foil. I'm trimming off the excess here. I could have trimmed it beforehand. I was being kind of lazy. Now I'm putting that all face down onto my warmed up Spellbinders Glimmer machine. I'll put the 2 plates on top of it and press the timer button. That timer goes for about a minute or so. Once it has stopped flashing, I'm going to take all of those plates and the platform out of the Glimmer machine and run it through my Spellbinders Platinum die cut machine. So the Glimmer machine provides the heat, the die cut machine applies the pressure, and that will give us a beautiful foil image. If you have a different die cut machine, there are other foil machines out there. You just need to check with the manufacturer. They all work the same. All right, now that I have that beautiful foiled image, let's do the stenciling over it. If I wanted to, I could stamp the leaves using the stamp set, but I love the ease of using a stencil and that I can mix colors together with no effort at all. Now I'm using that wider Spellbinders Best Ever tape to mask off the other areas. You could use masking paper, you could use Post-it notes, scrap paper, whatever you want. I'm using this tape because I can wipe it off and reuse it again. Over foiled images, I like to use dye ink. I'm using Hero Art's Core Inks today, and I use a blending brush, but you could use whatever blending tool you feel most comfortable with. I put a green towards the center of the leaves, and I'm putting red towards the tips of the top leaves, and like a pumpkin color towards the tips of the bottom leaves. Now the key to blending is always to overlap your colors. It's also good to start out with a light hand and build up that color. That'll prevent any splotches. So here I have a leaf that has lots of color to it. So much easier to do that with stencils than with stamps. Now I'll use the coordinating die to cut this image out. I actually created 2 just the same, and I'll use both on my card. I like how this die cuts pretty close to the edge of the inking, giving beautiful results. I ink these leaves to kind of have a fall feel, but you definitely could change up the colors you use to be able to use it all year round. Next, I need to create that background. You can see there is a subtle shine to it and a pretty pattern. This is very easy to do. I'm using the Waffle Flower Vintage Vine Hot Foil Plate and a piece of Hero Art Sand cardstock. It's a nice light craft color. I'm creating a hinge at the top of the foil plate. By the way, the reason I like this Best Ever tape from Spellbinders for foiling is because it doesn't get sticky from the heat from the Glimmer machine, and it just works really well. Some tapes get kind of sticky when you apply that heat. Next, I have a piece of Spellbinders Glimmer Opal foil. This is beautiful, a must-have if you have a foil machine. It doesn't have any color to it, just an iridescent shine. So whatever color cardstock you use will still show through, but it'll be shiny wherever that hot foil plate touches. Off screen, I did the foiling process with this, just like you saw me do earlier. Once I'm done, check out the beautiful opal foil. You peel it off and you can save this piece and use the reverse on another card. But look at that. I love how it just adds a little bit of interest. Depending on how you tilt it in the light, you see that sparkle or shine. Now I'm going to trim this down so it's about 4 by 5 1/4 inches. And I'll be using a note card that is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, so it's slightly bigger. Now we can do the fun stepped back die cutting. This is where our die cut is set back into our background piece. I'm planning where I want my 2 leaves to be. The one on the left is set back. So let's start by die cutting a window in our background for that leaf. So position kind of here over to the left-hand side. I'll tape it in place and run it through my die cut machine. By the way, when I tape my dies in place for die cutting, I like to use Easy C tape. That's what I'm using here. I found that it's never torn before when I run it through my die cut machine, so that's what I use here. I use the Best Ever tape for foiling. Now we have our background cut with a window for the stepped back die cutting technique. Now there's a few ways to do it. What I like to do is cut 3 or 4 pieces of scrap cardstock to be slightly smaller than that background. So here I have a piece of cardstock and I'm just putting marks on 2 sides of it to make sure that I'm cutting pieces that are slightly smaller than that background. This definitely beats measuring. Now I'll take that piece and another piece of cardstock and cut along those little pencil marks. So I'm cutting 2 pieces at once, and these will both be slightly smaller than our background piece. I then want to do the same on another piece. So I'm holding them together here, putting pencil marks again, and then cutting this. Now you could do 3 or 4 layers here. It doesn't matter how many. I ended up cutting 4, but only using 3. By the way, these pieces here could be any scrap cardstock, maybe recycled packaging, mess up pieces, whatever you want. I'll take one of the pieces and put it behind our foiled background. I then will take the die cut that came out of that background and put a little temporary tape along the back of it here and there. I will pop it into the opening of the background and then remove the background from it, leaving that brown die cut on the white piece. I will then take the die and place it right over the die cut and tape it there. We'll run it through our die cut machine, and this will cut the leaf into that white piece in the same position as it is on our background. So this could be glued right behind our background piece and it'll line up nicely. So we're slowly building the dimension behind that brown foiled background piece. Let's do that again. This time I'll use the white leaf die cut. I'm going to save the brown one for another project. I'll put a little temporary adhesive on the back of it, lay our background on top of one of the white pieces, put the die cut into the opening, remove the brown foiled background, and then line up our die on top of that die cut. So this die cut here is simply just a holding place for our die to pop onto so that I know it's positioned right to run it through our die cut machine. I'll show you another way to do this later in this video. You could also, instead, if you prefer, build up dimension with foam tape or craft foam or whatever. I just like to use my scraps of cardstock for this, and it makes it stronger for the mail. I did this process a couple more times, and you can see all of the pieces up there on the top right. Now I'm gluing all of these behind our craft foiled piece. This is how I'm building dimension here. You have other options though. You could use foam tape. you could use craft foam. But I like to use scrap cardstock because it's a great way to use your recycled material. It's stronger when it goes through the mail. It lays nice and flat, and it's less expensive than foam tape. Now, if you prefer to not have as much dimension on your card, what you could do is take this die-cut craft foiled piece and not add any of these white die-cut pieces behind it. Just glue the craft piece directly onto your white note card. And then you could just do a simple inlaid die cut. It wouldn't be set back, but it still would look great. And I'll talk a little bit more about that a little later. For my card, I ended up only using 3 of these white pieces glued to the back of the craft foiled piece. Now let's add the die cut into this window. I'll flip it over and I'll just put the die cut right into the opening. Then I'm putting a piece of Scotch tape on the back of it just to hold the die cut in place. I found this was the easiest way to inlay that die cut into all of the dimension. Now I'll put adhesive all over the back. I like to use Gina K Connect liquid adhesive, and I'll place this onto that 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch white note card. And when I place this down, you'll see that my die cut glues directly to the card, and the frame stands up because of that added dimension behind it. So our leaf is actually set back into the background. It's just a really cool look of dimension, especially in real life. I wish the video picked it up, but it's just so much more fun than just gluing the die cut on top. But if you wanted to, you could just do a die cut inlay here by skipping those white die cut pieces that I put behind the craft piece for dimension. All right, so now let's add the other leaf. With this leaf, I want it to pop up instead of being set back. And the best part is I get to use my leftover white die cuts. So I have our inked leaf here, and behind it, I'm gluing 3 or 4 of those white leaf die cuts. Those are just scrap pieces of cardstock. I usually use like inked paper or stamping that I messed up for this, but I didn't have any left in my bin, so I'm just using an inexpensive cardstock. But again, use recycling if you have it. All right, so now I will glue this right onto our background. So the leaf on the left is set back and the leaf on the right is set up, popped up. Now for a sentiment, I'm using the Hey There foil and die plates from Waffle Flower. I foiled the Hello Friend with black foil, so to have a nice shine to it. But you could do a stamped image if you prefer. I then die cut the Hello Friend, added a couple extra die cuts from scrap paper behind it, and I'll glue it right onto our leaves. Now notice that the Hello Friend is kind of hanging off to the left. That's okay. It doesn't matter. Because I put extra dimension behind it, it's strong and it won't get squished or creased in the mail. I don't have to worry about it because of the strength of the layered die cuts. That's one of the other reasons I do that, not only for dimension. So here is the completed card. It has lots of dimension because we have the leaf in the back that's set back into our background, and then the leaf in the front that's popped up for more dimension. And then on top of that, we have our sentiment. I love dimension like this. If you're wondering how to mail this, you could use a rigid mailer. That's what I normally use. I'll link to the one that I like below, and it doesn't cost that much more to mail. Or you could use a padded envelope. I don't mind spending a little more for postage when I put this much effort into a card. However, if you prefer to not have the dimension, you could have just done that leaf on the back left, just a simple inlay, so it'd be nice and smooth, and then glued the leaf on the right on top of that. I'll link to a video about inlay if you're looking for more no bulk options. And thanks to the foil, you have a lot of shine on this card too, which also adds interest. By the way, on the matching envelope, I stamped a fun sentiment, and that is from the new Waffle Flower Inky Hello stamp set. It has lots of different stamps that would work great for envelopes or the back of cards. You can even do like handmade, hand stenciled, hand stamped, die cut and foiled, all those things on the back of your card, and then just sign your name. Let's do another example. This time I have 2 images set back and 2 popped up. So I'm using that winter leaves combo again. I have foiled with Aura gold foil the stem for this little berry image. And I'm die cutting before I stencil this time. I'm putting the negative space onto a sticky mat and then putting the die cut into the negative space. Then I will do the stenciling. The reason I did this is that way I can be sure that I'm putting the berries just right, positioned just right on the die cut. I didn't want to foil, stencil, and then realize I had the stencil offset and that the die wouldn't work to cut it out. So die cutting worked best to do first here, but it really doesn't matter. And remember, sometimes you see people do projects a certain way in videos. It doesn't mean that you have to do it that way. Do what works best for you. What you see me doing is what I find works best for me. I'm hoping it's helpful to you, but definitely go with whatever method works for you. All right, so now I have these kind of pinkish red berries added to this gold foiled image. Off screen, I did a second piece just like that one, and I foiled with green foil and inked with green ink the 2 holly leaves. So I have all of those pieces ready to go. The green ink that I used for the holly leaves is the same that I used earlier in this video. Now let's do that background. This is one of my favorite ways to foil, and that is white foil on a color cardstock background. The foil plate I'm using is from Waffle Flower. It's called Swag. There are 2 coordinating stencils that allow you to color in the foiled image. However, I'm just using the foil plate today. I just wanted to show you the stencils were an option too. So I'm creating a hinge at the top of the foil plate using a piece of the Best Ever tape. I have a piece of light blue cardstock. You can use any cardstock for this. Yes, smooth cardstock does work best with foil, but with a foil plate like this, I find anything works. And this is just regular pool colored cardstock. I'm using the white opaque foil, which comes with a black also. And I'm trimming off the excess, taping that side, and I'll go through the foil process as you saw me do earlier. I then will remove the cardstock, and you see this white foil. It's just beautiful on that color. And I can save the remainder of the foil for another project. I now have the berry and holly leaf die taped onto my background, kind of towards the top center. I'll run that through my die cut machine, and I'm going to keep those 2 dies connected by that tape. In fact, I'm going to take another piece of tape to put on top of that area in between the dies so that they stay connected in this spacing. I want to be able to die cut from more pieces of cardstock with the dies in that position. So I have a piece of scrap cardstock here. I'm taking those 2 dies and placing them towards the top center, trying to mimic what I did on the background. Now, I'm not doing a perfect job here. It's okay. I wanted to demonstrate that this is another way to build up that dimension behind our main blue piece. So I ran that through my die cut machine, and now I can put glue on the front of this and then lay our blue die cut and foiled piece on top of it. You'll notice that they don't line up. That's okay. Whatever is hanging out the edge will get trimmed off with scissors. In fact, my white piece was bigger than the blue piece. This is just another way to build up those layers behind the blue, to do that stepped back dimension. Now on my first card, I used the die that popped out, the leaf die, to help line up the die on each of the pieces so that it all laid together nicely and you had that step back dimension. This is just another way to do it. And as I mentioned, you could always use foam tape, you could use craft foam, or you could just do the blue layer as one layer and inlay the die cuts. Totally up to you. Now I'm going to do the same on these others. So I have another piece of cardstock, trying to position that die just about in the same, and then run that through my die cut machine. I'll repeat this process with 3 total pieces of white cardstock, gluing each to the back of the blue piece and trimming off the excess. And by the way, this design and the first card would be great for shaker card windows. So what you could do is put a piece of acetate between the first white layer and the blue layer, and that will create like a little shaker pocket in there where you can add little shaker goodies. If you're interested in how to do a video like that, I'll link to it up here on the top right. All right, so now I'm taking the die cuts that we created earlier, and I'm popping them in place and putting some Scotch tape on the back, and I'll do the same with this holly leaf. Now, there are a few ways you could do this, but I found this to be definitely the easiest way to put those die cuts in place. I'll put liquid adhesive over the entire back of that and add it to a 4¼ by 5½ inch top folding white note card. I have my other berry here, and I'm gluing 2 or 3 white die cuts that I have left over now, gluing that to the back of our inked berry to give it dimension so this pops up. And then I'll do the same thing for the other holly leaf so it has dimension too. I'm also getting my sentiment ready so I know where to arrange everything, and I'm using this Waffle Flower Hello Friend stamp set and coordinating die. I really like all of the different sentiment sets that Waffle Flower has like this because you can easily die cut out your sentiment and add it anywhere you want on the card, as I'm doing today. Now I have my stacked berry die cut, and I'm putting that right onto the background, and I'll do the same with the holly leaf. And then right on top of that, I will add the wishing you the best of everything. I also added a twine bow behind that just to kind of pull it all together. So here you can see the fun foiling. We have the sparkly foiling behind our inking. We have the white foiling on the background on the light blue cardstock. And then we have the look of dimension, extra dimension, because we have some die cut step back and some popped forward. Okay, let's create a third card. This time I'm not doing any stenciling, not doing foiling for the main technique, but instead using a layering die set. This is the new Waffle Flower Winter Crystal dies. I thought these would be fun for demonstrating that even layering die sets work great with this technique, where you have some die cutting step back and some popped forward. I'm also using the Waffle Flower Nesting Portrait Arches dies. These have a faux stitching on the inside edge. I'm taking the largest die, which is about 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches, and I'm taping it onto the front of a note card of the same size. However, the left edge of that die is hanging off the creased edge. If you look there, the cutting edge on the side there where the fold of the card is, that cutting edge is hanging off the edge. So when I run that through my die cut machine, all of the sides will cut except that crease size. So that way I have a folded note card in the end with that fun shape to it. The cardstock I chose to use here is kind of thin. It's only 80 pounds. So I decided to give it some strength by adding a die cut to the inside where I'll write my personal message. I used the one size smaller arch die so you can see it fits there nicely. And now the card has more strength to it. We'll also put some layers on the front, which will give the front strength too. I have cut another large arch from the same pink cardstock. This will go on the front of the card. Towards the bottom of it, I'm taking the Hello Friend foil plate, and I'll tape it there with a hinge, and I'll pull that back and add some sparkling magenta foil underneath it. This is one of my favorite foils. It's a new one. It's just a great way to add some fun and shine to your card. I did the foiling process off screen, just like I showed you at the beginning of the video. Now it's time to create our snowflake die cuts. Let's create that frame first, which will be popped up. I'm taking the 2 frame dies from the Winter Crystals, I think it's called, die set, and I'm taping those together, centered inside of each other, and then I'll run that through my die cut machine. I'm putting extra tape on this, using the thicker tape because I want it to keep those dies taped together in that same position. And I'll do this 3 or 4 times to create 3 or 4 of those frame die cuts. Again, these will get glued together and added to the front of our card for the stepped up look. I also die cut the snowflake itself 3 times from a bright pink cardstock and glue those together, again for more dimension. Using the smaller of the 2 frame dies, I'm cutting a window right at the top center of the pink arch piece that has our foiled sentiment. This will allow us to do the set back look or set back dimension. Now we need to add some dimension behind that pink arch piece with the Hello Friend sentiment. Now you could use the same large arch die and line up that window on each of the pieces. But here's a trick. I'm using the arch die that's 1 smaller, and that way it's easier to line up. I cut the large frame from that, and now I'll put glue on the top of that die cut and glue it behind that main piece that will be the front of our card. So notice I have a lot of wiggle room here. I didn't have to make sure the frame was lined up just right because I used the smaller arch die and the bigger window frame. But if you feel more comfortable using one of the methods I showed you earlier, you could definitely do that. Or if you wanted to, again, you could use foam tape or craft foam here. So I will do this with 3 layers of this pink cardstock to build up that dimension behind our main piece. By the way, I really shouldn't have used that precious pink cardstock. I should have used white because no one sees it, but I did it for some reason when creating the video. All right, now onto the back of this, I've created 1 white arch, and I'll glue that to the back so this white will peek through that open window. Now we can add this onto the front of our card that we created with the arch die. So this will cover the entire card front, and now our card will have strength to it and that set back dimension. I'm gluing the pink layered snowflake die cut right into that opening onto the white cardstock piece. So this is set back. Actually, now the top of the snowflake is flush with the front of the card. And I have our layered die cut frame that I'll glue onto the front of that pink panel. So this will be our stepped up dimension. This is a simple card design, and we're adding interest to it by doing the stepped back and stepped up dimension. If you wanted to, you could keep it simple by just gluing the layers of the die cut together, or even doing inlay for all of the layers, so it would be a smooth card front. Here you can see the little bit of shine that I added using some iridescent confetti, and then we have the shine of the foiled sentiment on the bottom. By the way, I've heard people mention that they really wish they could do foiled sentiments but don't have a foil machine. There are companies that have pre-foiled sentiments available. This is from Waffle Flower. They have several different ones. They have silver foil, gold foil, different sentiments. But look at this. They come pre-die cut and pre-foiled, so you can quickly add them to your card. I just wanted to mention this in case you were interested in the foil look but don't have a machine. Also, I thought I'd show you this new Waffle Flower Winter Lake die. I didn't get to use it today because my video is long enough as is, but I thought this would be excellent for doing the same technique. You could set back some of the layers and then pop up other parts. So you could set back the sky and the pond and then pop up the trees. And then you'd have lots of dimension, which would really step up your card. I hope you liked the ideas that I shared today and that you'll give them a try on your own projects. I do have the supplies I used linked below in my description. You can also go to my blog where I have a lot more information. You can even bookmark cards or videos for future reference. At the end here, I'll link to a couple other videos that share dimension ideas. And I hope you have a wonderful day. I'll be back soon with another video.